ever tried a hallucinogen? LSD or cannabis, any of those types of drugs? I wouldn't really necessarily recommend that you answer that question, mainly because you'll get in trouble. But the point of me asking is for you to self-reflect, because have you ever felt the need to do it again? Have you ever felt that addiction? So I am currently in a psychology class as a psych major, and we were learning about cognition in probably like last week. And we're learning about cognition, and specifically about how drugs alter the brain. And the one that fascinated me the most was about hallucinogens, because he said something that shocked me the most. Hallucinogens are not typically effective or addictive. And I just wanted to share that with you guys today. Now, the type of hallucinogens are DMT, LSD, PCP, psilocybin, which would be magic mushrooms or shrooms, mescaline, and cannabis. Now, on the website National Institute on Drug Abuse, the article How Do Hallucinogens, LSD, Psilocybin, Peyote, DMT, and Ayahuasca Affect the Brain and Body explains how hallucinogens cause their hallucinations by acting on neural circuits that emit serotonin, which is a neurotransmitter within the brain, within the prefrontal cortex of the brain. Now, neurotransmitters are basically the hormones between the receptors. The prefrontal cortex is involved with mood, attention, cognition, and perception. And there are two most common drugs that you might have actually tried and probably shocked you to hear on that list, as these also affect your cognition. Of course, we know LSD is a hallucinogen, but it is very common. This is probably one of the most powerful hallucinogens, as it is measured in micrograms, as said in the article LSD Information on the website Narconon. LSD causes intense hallucinations, which is what is typically known for, and is usually taken as a powder or in a small square of blotter paper, as this drug is derived from a fungus that grows on grains, which is stated in Buddy Tea's what are hallucinogens. Now, blotted paper would be if you pour the liquid on top, it's going to dry out, and you were to cut that paper into little tiny squares and then ingest that square, and it takes that little tiny, I'm going to say about 20 milligrams to get you high. Now, the one that might shock you the most would be cannabis or marijuana. Weed. It is not only a hallucinogen, as it can also be considered a stimulant or depressant. My assumption is based on that there are so many different strains, such as indica or sativa, whereas indica puts you in a more calming state, and sativa makes you want to go clean the house. So, that being said, it can also be considered a hallucinogen as you start to see different colors. I'm sure you've seen that 70s show where things start to twist and turn, or any other shows that try to mimic the effects of marijuana. They usually perceive it as a hallucinogen. The main chemical within marijuana is THC, which influences the cognitive functions, memory, appetite, learning, coordination, and pleasure, as stated in Bobby T's What Are Hallucinogens as well. But how do these mind-altering drugs affect you? So, you've always been told that all drugs are bad as you become extremely addictive, but as said earlier, these are not typically addictive. However, using these perception-changing drugs can cause other long-term effects, such as persistent psychosis and HPPD, which is hallucinogen persisting perception disorder, which can be focused on the article, or found in the article, How Do Hallucinogens, LSD, Psilocybin, Peyote, DMT, and Ayahuasca Affect the Brain and Body on the National Institute on Drug Abuse. The website also explains the symptoms of persistent psychosis as visual disturbances, disorganized thinking, paranoia, and mood disturbances, while HPPD has symptoms that include hallucinations, other visual disturbances, and other symptoms mistaken as other mental disorders. And I think the main takeaway is that it's like you never get off of the drug. And that can be very terrifying, depending on what you see, because now you're seeing things that aren't even real anymore. Although they can be unlikely, they are still something to be aware of and maybe more common than you think. And it is always better to be cautious of what you're putting into your body before you take it. Now, these drugs like cannabis and LSD can be easily accessible and alter your cognitive function very easily through access of your neural circuits. and they are not usually addictive but can cause damage to your brain and or create a severe mental disorder. These mental disorders can make it feel as though you never became sober, but it's unlikely to tame one after one time. This is depending on how much you take, because once again, it takes very little LSD to trip so much as it just takes one little tiny piece of paper.